So let's start with pretty much the most important thing when making YouTube videos, and I would argue that's the camera you're using. Now, I think a lot of other people may argue that audio equipment is more important, but I'll leave that for next in the video. So I've been making videos for a while now, and I've owned a lot of different cameras. My first camera was a Canon T3i, which was pretty popular even on YouTube 10 years ago. But since then, I have switched around. I had a Blackmagic Pocket 6K that I actually still own. I just don't use it as much. And I've pretty much transitioned fully over to Sony mirrorless cameras. Now, the Sony mirrorless camera that I'm using to film this video right now, as well as 95% of the content you'll see on this channel, is the Sony ZV-E1. If you're unfamiliar with the Sony ZV-E1, you're essentially getting the same sensor that you would find in a Sony a7S III. Now, I will go ahead and note some of the drawbacks that you'll get with the ZV-E1 as opposed to some of the more expensive cameras with the same sensor. Now, the most common issue with the ZV-E1 is the overheating. However, for me, this has never been an issue. The ZV-E1 was one of the first generations that implemented a better autofocus system as well as a upgraded active stabilization system. Now, if the ZV-E1 is out of your price range or you're not really looking to spend that much to get started, I think a great option even in 2025 is the Sony a7 III. The Sony a7 III was the first Sony full-frame camera that I purchased and pretty much what convinced me to go all in on the ecosystem. I see a lot of these bodies going for $1,000 or less, and I think you get some great bang for your buck when purchasing a secondhand a7 III. Now, when I'm filming videos on YouTube or even some small commercial gigs, I like to mix up the footage and use different formats. Nowadays, there's so much you can do in post-processing with editing that you can make your footage look more vintagey, either like a VHS style or even like a 16mm, but there's nothing quite like getting the authentic footage in your videos. So in the majority of the videos I make here on YouTube, even if they're not centered around cameras, I do like to mix in some shots in there that I take on my camcorder. What I really love about this camcorder specifically is that it does have night shot, so you're able to take footage at night and has a really nice green tint look to it, and it just stands out and kind of separates my footage when I need to add in like a quick B-roll section, or I just want something to kind of break up the talking head. So now that we went over the cameras that I used to film with on this YouTube channel, I think there's one other camera that I think definitely deserves a spot on this list. I will say hands down that the Ricoh GR3 is my favorite camera I own. If I could only own one of the cameras I have here, it would be this Ricoh GR3, and I'd be filming these YouTube videos on my phone, which actually isn't a terrible idea. But anyways, this camera has gotten me to be a lot more inspired and actually take photos on a very consistent basis. I just got back from a work trip yesterday and had to take some photos of an old building, and I took my standard photos with my phone for the reason I was being there for work, but I wanted to also take some artistic photos with my Ricoh GR3, but I was able to get some really nice liminal style photos. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but I was able to get some pretty unique photos that I really enjoyed, and it's just not a look I would be able to get on any of the other cameras that I have here. Now that I've talked about the cameras I'm using, they're not really much use without lenses, so I want to talk about the lenses I use to create videos here on YouTube. So the first lens I want to mention, and it's the one I'm filming on, is my Sigma 24mm f1.4. When I picked up my a7 III, I was looking for a nice lens to pair it with that wasn't too expensive. It is still fairly expensive, I'm not gonna lie, but the 24mm focal length was a nice all-around lens for me. I think if you only have one lens with your mirrorless camera, somewhere in the 24mm to 28mm range is just about perfect. If you pair the Sigma 24mm with a camera like the ZV-E1 that already has fantastic low light capabilities, you have a camera that you can practically film anywhere. So if I could only own two lenses with my Sony mirrorless cameras, it would have to be the Tamron 17 to 28 as well as the Tamron 28 to 75. So these two lenses are seen as pretty much a budget alternative to the Sony G Master lenses. If I could only choose one, it would definitely have to be this 28-75. I would say that this lens is on my camera the majority of the time. The 28-75 provides a great focal length for filming around my office here and any of the other things I need to film for these YouTube videos. What's different about this 28-75 is that it is the G2, which is the newer version. Now, the next thing I want to touch on is audio. Audio can definitely make or break your video. I had a huge mess up on my retro camcorder video where for some reason when I rendered it only outputted to, I believe, the right headphone. And the majority of the comments on that video are talking about that blunder. So, since then I've definitely learned that audio is a very important aspect of your videos. Now, there is two main audio sources that I use. The first one I want to talk about is the DJI mics that I'm actually using right now to film this YouTube video. These are the original DJI mics. I definitely don't think my videos warrant an upgrade to the newer version. These are working absolutely fine for me. But I will say if you're interested in purchasing the DJI mics, definitely go with the newer version if you're able to, or you might even be able to get a good discount on the original version. I hopped on eBay and I was able to purchase an open box Sony ECM B1M microphone. I was able to pick this up for, I believe, a third of the retail price. And at first I didn't think it was gonna be real. I thought maybe I got scammed. Audio equipment is definitely something you don't necessarily want to cheap out on. And probably the main reason I picked up a Sony mic like this is that it runs directly on the camera's hot shoe. I can't tell you how many times I have hooked up mics to my camera and accidentally plugged in the 3.5mm audio into the headphone jack instead of the audio input jack and just was left with no audio at all. So with getting this Sony shotgun mic, that is just one issue I don't really have to worry about. What's really nice about the K&F Concept tripod is that I have my Sony ZV-E1 in a small rig cage, and I'm able to mount my camera directly to the tripod without needing any type of tripod plates. This of course saves time when actually setting up the camera, but I also think it's a lot more stable because I don't have an additional screw that I then need to actually fasten to a plate and then slide on the tripod. This tripod is very light and easy to use. And one huge feature that actually was the reason that I purchased this one specifically is that you're able to do overhead shots with it without needing something more heavy duty like a C-stand. Now, when I just need to grab a vlog style shot and I don't want to just hold the camera out in front of me, this Ulanzi mini tripod has been pretty fantastic for that. Now, the range of this tripod as far as the level that you're able to raise it to is not enough for me to be able to use this on my desk to actually film these kind of talking head shots with. It's a little low for me without putting the desk too high and just creating kind of an unnatural look. But for the money, it has been pretty nice for getting the shots that I need when I need to have the camera out in front of me. It's a lot more stable than actually just holding the camera with the simple grip on the side. Now, the last thing that I really want to touch on is the lighting that I use for these videos. So you notice I have a lot of lamps in my office. That's just because I really enjoy either making them or owning them and just creating kind of like a nice cozy environment. The main light that I use, and pretty much the only one that I'm actually using to make YouTube videos, is my Amaran 150C. This light is great for making talking head shots like this one. I have it paired with a smaller softbox from Amaran, as well as a grid to help focus that light. Now, every piece of gear that I use here has helped to streamline my process instead of hindering it. I think the biggest barrier for making YouTube videos is the setup and teardown that you need to actually get started. When I was first starting to try to start this YouTube channel even, I would find myself setting up for what seemed like an hour, and I would even start sweating at some points trying to get stuff perfectly in there. And by the time I got to that point, all just my energy and enthusiasm to make the YouTube videos had pretty much vanished. So if you're able to create an environment where you can easily set up and film YouTube videos without too much work, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that you can do to actually push yourself to put these YouTube videos out. Now, if you made it all the way to the end of this video after hearing me rant about all my gear, I really do appreciate you watching. I do enjoy making these YouTube videos, which is just sometimes tough to do when working a full-time job, but it's a passion that I have and I definitely want to keep going. So if there's anything you want to see more of, definitely let me know. Again, thank you for watching and have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you.